Hi, friends. Hello and welcome once again into Buzz TV. Bryan Race, Ray Civitts. We are always thrilled when we get a little bit of time to come and spend that time with you. And of course, we're just absolutely over the moon that you're spending some time with us getting ready for the 2024 bee season. I want to start off the show just with a piece of advice for the kids that are listening. You know how your mother always tells you that God gave you 2 ears and 1 mouth, and so you're supposed to listen more than you talk? I should have done more listening in our pre-planning production meeting, because I sure thought Ray said, get a buzz cut for Buzz TV, and that was not at all what you were saying. And so now I'm walking around with a walking billboard for Buzz TV, and well,
or a Q-tip,
or a Q-tip. So there's some karma. There's some karma in that comment. Of course, you hear Nikki chiming in. We're going to introduce. We're going to introduce Nikki here in just a moment. But why don't you go ahead and give us a quick tease of what we're going to be focused on tonight and who the show is really for this evening?
Well, Bryan, this is a special edition of Buzz TV, and we're really looking at how to properly set a beehive with everything that we have to look at as beekeepers. How do we do it the best for our bees at the very start to be successful? If you're not successful in setting your hive to begin with, you're going to lose your bees one way, shape, or bounds on that there. So the big thing is proper placement. Proper placement is a good thing for successful beekeeping. So that's what we're going to look at.
Yeah, and those that have been beekeeping for a long time may feel as if they've got a good grasp on this, but would this be an important show for somebody who's only been in beekeeping a few years, or maybe this will be your first year of having an apiary in the backyard?
Well, you know, typically we don't hear from these folks that have not set the hive properly until May or June when they've lost their bees. And we're trying to cut that down to 0 for all of our new beekeepers and some of our 2, 3, and 4-year-old in the hobby beekeepers there.
And those of you with a little more experience, you probably get asked some of the same questions that Ray and Nikki will be covering quite a bit. So you may pick up a few nuggets along the way that will be very helpful as new beekeepers reach out to you, because you're a seasoned beekeeper and now you've got a little bit more information in your arsenal to pass along, so that everybody has a prosperous season and the bees don't die off, and the bees are happy, you're happy, and there's lots of honey being produced this year.
Now, changing subjects a little bit, Bryan, we're down to 8 days before our nukes get here. And this is just prime time learning for a lot of these new beekeepers that have purchased nukes coming in. We'll have our store open. We're in hyperdrive right now. We're beyond warp drive. We're into hyperdrive. And we've gotten all of our cages in to get the season started with the Postal Service. Nikki and I and Aubrey have been out to Charlotte and North Carolina, the new distribution facilities for the U.S. Postal Service, to help educate those staffs there. So we've been busy, but this is so important. We wanted to just take a few minutes of your time and just step you through successful beekeeping. And that begins with setting your hive correctly.
And this is a good time for me just to remind everybody, tonight's program brought to you by Mountain Sweet Honey at mountainsweethoney.com. Ray Civitts is the owner of the company. Nikki, who you'll meet shortly, involved in the operations department as operations manager. And mountainsweethoney.com to get bees, to get nukes, to get beekeeping supplies. Without their support, there is no Buzz TV. So thank you, Ray, and the entire team at Mountain Sweet Honey.
Well, thank you, Bryan. Well, we have Nikki on the board there, and she's going to be taking your questions on Facebook and YouTube. So ask questions away, and we'll try to either have them on the air here, or we'll answer them right online as those questions pop up. All right, so let's get started. And Bryan, why don't we go on ahead and get the slide up here? And I've got my telestrator working again, folks, and we had a lot of good feedback on the telestrator, and we're going to keep the telestrator going from this point going forward. Okay, so when we have a beehive or beehives, as we are shown right here, there's a lot of things that come into play. Is there a perfect place for a hive? Probably not, unless it's right out in the middle of a field. But we're going to step through this step by step and make sure that we're communicating where the best place is for a hive. Let's start with the sun here. Let me get my telestrator working here. Okay. So we've got the sun right here. He's happy, or not so happy, I guess, right there. The sun is very, very important, folks. Bees need as much sun as possible. So when we look at sun, how much sun is hitting the hive, we want to see during the spring and summer months somewhere between 10 and 12 hours of daylight directly on the bees. Now, you may be saying, Ray, I want to offer shade to my bees. Well, that's not the way our bees are made. Our bees are made to get as much sun as possible. And if they get too warm on the inside, then they'll come around the outside of the hive and congregate out there where it's cooler and allowing less bees on the inside, so it will cool down in there also. Now, the sun also plays an important part of keeping the soil. Let me go back to this again. The soil right here in front of the hives is very, very important. We want to see, as beekeepers, this area really dry. And the reason being is first of all, we as beekeepers will be behind the hives, and we want to have good, firm footing when it comes to us managing the hives. We don't want to be slipping around in mud or wet grass. So having a good dry on top of a hill, as you see right here, this is the hill, is always very, very good. The other thing that the sun does to the soil here, it keeps it dry so that when we have small hive beetles that come out and go into the ground to pupate, the pupate will go into dry ground and will die. And most of the time will dry, especially if you use diatomaceous earth to treat in front of the hives. And Clemson University at one point did a really good study on how far not the varroa, but the small hive beetle pupa will get on the ground and how far will they crawl. And this is 14 foot is the maximum that they'll crawl. And one of the things that I like to do is put landscaping fabric under rock in front of it so that, one, they can't burrow down into the ground, and the heat from the architectural fabric will burn them up. So that's why I like to see dry ground, and also the dryness and full sun will help you as a beekeeper on that side. Now, let's take a look at this tree right here. I'm taking it that this is in a northeastern position. The thing that you do not want to do is put hives underneath the tree branches that are there, because one, if we look at that, the tree has shade, and that shade will keep a moist ground there. So again, you're playing with the small hive beetle pupa to make sure that they don't have a moist soil to go into. Now, a northeast or true north tree, where the hives are out far enough from the branches themselves, is ideal. Now, obviously in here, I'm not going to put them into the water source. That's yet to be spoken about. But that's what we want to make sure as beekeepers, what we're doing on that there. Now, this does not mean that you can't have bees if you have to put them in to a forest area. The issue that you will have is, one, again, the soil will be damp, and you'll need to put in small hive beetle traps within your hive to be able to keep the small hive beetles from taking over on the hive there. Nikki, do you have any questions that have come in?
That was actually going to be my question. There was one on there. What were the disadvantages and how could you overcome the hive beetle issue if you were sitting in a shade? Because I know we had a young lady actually come in the other day, and that was her problem, just where her hive was going to be. There are trees around. So that was one of the things that we discussed was the hive beetles. So you're saying the traps is the best option for that?
Yeah, and you want to use the beetle gel on that there, which uses a bait of apple cider vinegar, and I'll just draw a quick diagram here of it, and it just clips on to the frame itself. But in the center here, you're going to have where your bait is, and that's apple cider vinegar. And then over here on this side, you're going to fill it up on each side with mineral oil. And so the mineral oil is where they come in and they fall into this thinking that it's the apple cider vinegar. Okay. So it's a great bait, but this is something, folks, that you're going to have to change out once a week. So when you're doing your weekly hive inspections during the spring and summer, this has got to be one of the staples. And I would recommend, Nikki, that there would be 2 on each hive on the back side of the hive, where the beekeeper stands. It'd be the closest to them as possible.
Okay.
Because the small hive beetle does not like the direct sunlight, and that's part of the reason why they get chased to the back side of the hive on that.
Interesting. Okay, good to know.
All right. So we're out from underneath the tree, but that tree can also help us, along with what you see here, a hedge, an evergreen hedge. That evergreen is very, very important because during the winter months, you have a strong prevailing northern wind, and that can definitely chill your hives. Even here in the south, we have some 10 and 20 degree days, and sometimes those days go into several days. And when they go into several days, that's when you can lose your hive on that. So you can either create a barrier here in this area behind your hives, or you can have an evergreen hedge. And you would want that at probably about 5 feet high, so that would deflect the winds properly. And you may have to do additional bracing depending on your elevation and how strong the winds are on that side. All right, so let me clear this up just a little bit so we can keep drawing all over this. All right, so now we've talked about the evergreen hedge, we've talked about the prevailing winds, and now we've talked about the having trees or having them in a forest. Now, having them in a forest is something that we do see, especially those that are located in mountainous areas. They don't have a whole lot of direct sun. But again, if you put them in there, you got to be really on guard and be on the offensive and not on the defensive, especially as it pertains to small hive beetles. Now, the other thing that you want to do is you want to have these hives pointing in a southeast position. So if you want to get out your smartphone and go into one of the apps there and just open up your compass, that will help you position to the southeast. Now, southeast is there because it is the best optimization of sunlight. It will wake your bees up early. I see at times my bees are flying at 5:45 during the summer and late spring to begin collecting nectar and pollen. So southeast is the best. Now, if you have these pointing in a true south, then you're going to get a little less sunlight coming directly into the hive, and they're going to be flying out a little later in the morning on that. Now, there are some people that have such a mountainous area that they won't see the sunshine till 10, 11 o'clock in the morning. You still want to point them in a southeasterly direction. All right. Any other questions you got there, Nikki?
Well, I just had a quick question. So you're saying even if the sun doesn't hit until 10 or so, you still want that southeastern?
Yes.
So what would be the reason for that? Explain that.
It's the maximum. You got to get your bees woke up.
Okay.
You know, it's kind of like us as human beings is that we naturally wake up when the sunlight's coming in the morning and we're up and ready to go. The same thing with bees. Now, we're playing with a lot of issues here. One is the life expectancy of a spring and summer bee is 45 days. And we want to get the maximum effort out of those bees because the bees don't sleep. You know, when they're in their hive at night, folks, they're making propolis to patch up any holes within the hive. They're also making wax from their wax glands to do more combing within the hive. So these bees get no days off, no days off. And so what we're trying to do is just optimize, Nikki, every hour that those 45-day bees are there, because after 45 days, they're deceased at that point.
Okay.
All right. So we got a sturdy hive stand. That is important to have. There is getting them off the ground, folks. You know, depending on your height, it can be anywhere from 8 inches to 1.5 feet for taller folks. Now, one thing that you do want to be very careful on is how many supers you're going to go up. And typically, I would say no more than 4 supers up, depending on your height, of course. But you'll want to go on ahead and harvest that honey as soon as it's capped and just keep it rolling. But don't get where you're getting up into the eight high supers, because that's how you get yourself hurt with an 80 pounds or 100 pounds of super full of honey on that side. Nikki, have you ever gotten that high?
No.
Yeah.
No, but I've seen it. And I have a hard enough time even with just 3 because I'm kind of short. So to reach it's high. So I couldn't imagine those that do 7 and 8.
So we want to be safe, folks. That's the big thing with stacking our supers up. And it just takes us a few minutes to go out once a week, check on them, and add a super, take a super, and have enough supers on hand so that you're ready to add a super. You don't want to lose any nectar collection because you're having to put together a super and frames and put foundation in. All right, so we've got that.
Is there a specific type of stand that you feel is more durable or that's better to use for your hives?
Well, it really comes down to, Nikki, preference. If you got time on your hands, you can make a 2x6 hive stand and put it out in your yard and concrete it down, and it's there to stay for the next 100 years on that. But then we have the metal hive stands that's a quick, you can set them up and put your hive in it, and you're done within 15 minutes at the very max. And that's if you have to look for tools to put it together on that there. I personally don't go with the singles because I have, anywhere from 6 to 12 hives in my backyard. And that just doesn't work for us on single stands on that there.
Hey, Ray, this would be a good time to ask this question that I've seen come in about the difference between the 8 frame and the 10 frame. How do you make a determination about whether or not one is preferential over the other?
Well, Nikki and I have had a lot of talks over 8 frame and 10 frame. And Nikki, tell us a little bit about why the 8 frame is a good bargain for folks.
Well, and it really is, and this kind of goes back to even my size and being a female. I have a 10 frame. Like I said, sometimes it's a little more difficult for me. They get really heavy, and at any given time you could have 50, 70 pounds of honey and comb and nectar going on inside of your supers. So
Yes.
it needs to be something that's manageable. So the 8 frame is good for that. You lose a little bit of that weight. I can easily go in and pick it up and move it and do what I need to do without, destroying everything or
So
dropping
you don't have to go to Planet Fitness
Yeah.
to take off a super.
Not this year, yeah.
All right, good. All right, so now, Nikki, have you taken single frames out and put those into a reserve super and put a fresh frame in place of it? Have you done that?
I have not done that. I have not
Okay.
done just a single frame. So maybe
Because
you can walk me through.
sometimes those frames, you'll have only 2 or 3 that are capped, and the rest are in the midst of being
Not quite
capped, and you can't process those yet. So
Correct.
one of the tricks that folks do is just start pulling frames. Here in the South, you can start pulling frames as early as the first week of May, and up north, you're going to be looking at probably the middle of June before you're ready to start pulling any kind of frames out. So that is another option that's there, Bryan, just to answer your question there. All right, so let's go to the next part of this slide here is water. Water is so important, folks. You don't have to have it, within 15 feet like this picture has, but I would say that you should have it within 1,000 feet of the hive. Now, that does not have to be a running stream. You can also use like a bird feeder that you can buy almost anywhere. And what I would do is I'd just put rocks in it and then fill it up with fresh water. And the bees will come, they'll land on those rocks. Those rocks are there to allow them not to drown in the water there. So that's the reason why you want to put rocks in there that break the water line so that they can stand on it and drink at will. Now, that can be also a pond. It can be a river. It can be a little stream. But your bees need water year-round.
How about my neighbor's swimming pool?
Now, Bryan, that is not a good thing.
That's not being neighborly, is it?
Well, whether it's chlorinated pool or saltwater pool, the bees are going to get attracted to it. And so what I would say is if you can see your neighbor's pool, you got to have some real discussion with your neighbor and say, hey, I've got bees and they're going to be attracted to your pool. Could you call me the night before and let me know if you're going to have a pool day at your house? And if you do, then I'll put a mesh hive cover over it to contain the bees while you're enjoying your pool. Now, obviously, if they're going to be using their pool every day, then it's not a good time to do beekeeping because they're going to get frustrated. You're going to get frustrated. And that won't be good for the hobby there because we want everybody to enjoy.
So that could be a good, important conversation even before you get into the hobby is making sure they're okay and understand that there could be some bees that show up in the pool and that if they don't have your brand on them, they're not your bees. So blame somebody else if they're not branded
You got
from your
attorney
apiary.
hat on there, Bryan.
Yeah, let me ask you, because there's been some questions as to whether or not bees are more attracted to salt water versus, just a regular flowing water or chlorine, whatever it may be. So if you had maybe a saltwater setup, would that be more attractive? Do you know to the bees, would they likely go to that versus, or
Nikki,
is there
what I've found is bees go in both directions. We have a saltwater pool, and we find them very docile because we're not out swatting at them.
Right.
If you start swatting at bees, they're going to put a pheromone on you, and then they're going to start buzzing you. But bees love chlorine, and bees love salt. And so that salt water or chlorine water is going to be an attractant. And I'm going to do a test this year of having my bees over 1,000 feet away. and see if they're still attracted to the pool. We found that they ignored our pool. We had it put in May or in April, and we didn't see any coming to the pool until late July. And then they were there for the rest of the time. And basically what they look for is a seam where they can go down into the water, and then they do their drink and they go back up. It's like a ladder almost, and then they fly off. And when one falls in, I just put my finger out there, let them climb on it, and I just blow on them to get that little bit of water off of them, and then they fly off.
It's funny that you mentioned that. I wonder if it's because the temperatures were so hot at the end of the year, because our pool was very similar. We didn't see any, and then it was like they just started coming towards the end of summer, and my daughter would have her little friends over, and she would be okay. She'd like, look, Mom, the bees are here, but the friends, not so much. They didn't love it so much. So, but we did notice more towards the end of the summer.
So we'll see if I got something that we can utilize in science here or not.
Be
on that
interesting
there.
to see how that turns out.
So we will see, and we'll see how happy everybody is, the bees and me, at the end of the season on that there. Okay, so we've talked about the water source, and now let's talk about the drainage part. We talked that we got to have great footing. Now, some of us have carts that we've got to bring over to put our honey supers or to bring empty supers in. And the last thing that you want to do is have your tires get stuck in the mud. So you got to have good drainage for that there. All right, now that I've wet my whistle a little bit more, we can continue here. So we want to have this as semi-level ground. We don't want to have this on an embankment. It just makes it a little bit tougher on you as a beekeeper, and also just to keep good drainage there. So being on top of a hill is great, but getting there is also important. Bryan, do you have any questions from your side?
I've just seen a question or two wondering when the start of bee season kicks off for Mountain Sweet Honey. I know you mentioned a date earlier, but is that the second Friday in March? Is that accurate?
Yes, it's the 8th and 9th is when we're getting our nukes in, and we've got 500 coming in. And
fantastic.
And we're going to have a lot of new beekeepers. And one of the fun things on this, and we're going to do some videos, folks, of our nuke day. And we'll show some of those interviews that we've had there. But this is, once again, folks, why we're doing a special edition is to just go through why we do what we do as beekeepers. Now, you can get 1, 2, or 3 of these wrong because of where your setting is, but you'll have to make it up in one way or another to help keep your bees on the offensive rather than the defense on that there, because playing the defensive role in beekeeping is a lose-lose situation on that there. All right, Nikki, do you have any final questions?
Yeah, just one more question. So in an area where you have to do a rooftop hive, would this setup look similar, or would that change when you're on a rooftop?
Well, that's a very good question, because we have a lot of beekeepers in New York City, and they're going to have very level ground. And let me digress here just a little bit. One thing that we want on our hives is to have them at a 1 degree to 2 degree slant forward. If we're standing here behind the hive, we want that to slant forward so that the water, when it comes down, it will hit there and then go off. If we have it going the other way, the water will come in and flood the hive. So when we have a hive stand, we want to have that leaning 1 degree downward on that there. Now, let's get back to urban beekeeping. Urban beekeeping is a lot different. We have folks that have apartments and homes in metropolitan areas, and they face west. That's okay. you can still put them out on your patio, or maybe there's a garden area at the top of one of the skyscrapers in New York City, and they're facing the wrong way. Go on ahead, put the bees out there. They're just not going to be as productive as a farmer that puts these out in the middle of his field and in a southeasterly fashion.
Okay.
They will get honey. They will get plenty of honey, but they won't have the production that a farmer that has them right out in the middle of a field with 100% sunlight.
Okay, that makes sense. Yeah.
The other things is when it comes to urban beekeeping, you don't have to see the flora to get into it. There's roughly, Nikki, 5,000 beekeepers in New York City.
Wow.
And it's fun to, as we get orders in and I see New York City as the locale, or Manhattan or the Bronx, that we've been there, and we have other beekeepers in that area, and they're making it happen, and they're producing honey, and they sometimes wonder where in the world is that nectar coming from, because they might see a tree at the distance, but it's all a concrete jungle. And the bees will find it. They're really good at that. And yes, they'll fly up 45 stories high if they need to. And so they don't have to be on the ground. And in fact, I'm really amazed, Nikki, on how many urban beekeepers we have as customers.
Yeah. So I've seen quite a few that have come in from Manhattan myself. And having been to Manhattan for the first time last year, as you said, it's a concrete jungle. You can't see. At first I was in awe, and then I was like, I don't know if I could live this way, because it's building after building. But it's an amazing place to go and visit. But my thought too was, where are they going to get the nectar? Where are they going to find their pollen? What are they doing? But they're obviously doing it, because like you said, we have customers. I see orders all the time. People.
Well, right on top of Times Square, we have some hives that are up there with some of our customers. Wow. And so they're in the most fashionable known area in the world.
Yeah.
All right. Well, folks, that is what we have for our special edition Buzz TV for you today. Thank you for your business, and we look forward to seeing you in the near future. All right, folks, that does it for our placement of the hive today. Now, one thing I do want to let everybody know is we still do have some prime dates in March and April and May that are still available. We've sold out a lot of dates thus far, whether it be Caucasians being sold out for the 2024 season, or Italians. We've begun to close out some dates there too. We do have one date available for Russians and for Carniolans. So stop by, see us on our website at www.mountainsweethoney.com/bees, or call us at 706-886-1322. And one of our wonderful beekeepers will help you step forward with whatever your needs are. Again, we appreciate your business, and we'll see you soon.
Bye. Thanks for having me.
Bye.
I'm glad we were. Okay.
Thanks for checking out Buzz TV. Another